December 1st arrived like any other birthday for Emily, but with that special touch only Rose could bring. That Sunday evening, the house was modest yet brimming with life. They were setting up the Christmas tree. It was small, with fragile branches, but the ornaments carried stories. "This one was made with the lid of a mayonnaise jar," Rose said with a smile, "the kind that turns simplicity into affection." Emily, her hair tied up in a messy bun, laughed as she wrapped the unevenly blinking lights around the tree. "Who needs a fancy store when we have Rose's creativity?" she joked, earning a knowing grin from her mother. Rose's eyes bore the weariness of someone who had faced life's challenges head-on, yet they sparkled with unwavering resilience. Emily, with her youthful energy and slightly melancholic air she masked well, moved around the room with agile hands. Their world was humble, yet filled with warmth and love. Their house stood in a simple neighborhood where the old streets still echoed with memories of childhood games and neighbors who knew more about each other than they did about themselves. As night fell gently, the distant hum of TVs mingled with the earthy scent of trees and flowers from the yard. After finishing the tree, Rose had a surprise planned. "Why don't you take a look under the tree?" "Just out of curiosity, who knows if Santa came early this year," she said with a playful wink. Emily laughed, skeptical but intrigued, and found a small box under the tree. Inside, her eyes lit up at the sight, a car key. Rushing outside, she saw a white Kia Forte, its sleek frame glowing in the sunset, leaving her momentarily stunned. "Mom, I can't believe it. How is this even possible?" she exclaimed, her voice trembling with emotion. Rose, her own eyes glistening, explained about an inheritance from a distant uncle. "Life's funny, my dear, who would have thought he'd remember me?" she said, laughing and wiping away a tear. Their joy spilled into the quiet street, neighbors stepping out to clap as Emily dashed to test out the car. Rose climbed into the passenger seat. "Don't get too carried away. We're not rich. I used the money to make your dream come true, pay off some debts, and even cover your driving lessons. It's about time, don't you think? Although, it'll be hard saying goodbye to all those bus friends you've made," she teased. Emily, laughing through her tears, hugged her mother tightly. "You know, this reminds me of Dad. He's the one who taught me how to drive that old Chevy when I was 17. Rose, her voice soft, nodded. "He'd be so proud of you." That car was more than just transportation, it was a tangible symbol of love, connecting their past memories with future dreams. Later, alone in the quiet of her room, Emily struggled to process the whirlwind of emotions from the day. Kneeling by her bed, she thanked God for her life and her extraordinary mother. Then, reaching for a small wooden box, she retrieved her most treasured possessions. Inside was a faded photograph of a woman cradling her as a baby, with their names and her birth date written in delicate handwriting on the back. "Why, Evelyn," she thought, clutching the yellowed photo of her birth mother, a fragment of a life she had never known. The question haunted her, what could drive a mother to leave her baby at the doorstep of a church? It was a painful blend of anger, sadness, and curiosity. Beside the photo was a simple necklace with a light blue pendant, almost translucent, that caught the light as if it held a piece of the sky. It had been left with her on the day she was abandoned. Emily often held it during moments of doubt, as if hoping it might provide answers. She stared at the necklace for a while, feeling a flicker of hope. "Do you think she left this for a reason?" she once asked Rose, unable to put the ache into words. Rose, always calm, replied, "I don't know, sweetheart. But she gave you the greatest gift of all, the chance to live. And I thank her every day for that." Suddenly, the shrill sound of the phone ringing in the living room broke the stillness. Emily jumped up, puzzled by who might call so late. "Hello," she answered, her voice hesitant. On the other end, there was silence, a faint static, perhaps a breath. "Hello? Who is this?" she pressed, her throat tightening. But then, a click ended the call, leaving Emily holding the phone for a moment, stunned. Rose entered the room, startled by the noise, her expression wary. "Again?" Rose asked, frowning. Emily nodded, trying to brush off the unease growing in her chest. It wasn't the first time this had happened. Over the past few weeks, the phone had rung at odd hours, and the silence on the other end had started to feel more unsettling than coincidental. Sometimes it was in the mornings while Emily graded papers at the kitchen table. Other times, like tonight, it seemed to target her when she was alone and vulnerable. Maybe it's a wrong number? Or some prankster? Rose suggested, trying to lighten the mood. But to Emily, the silence felt different, personal, almost purposeful. She returned to her bed, her heart racing as she tried to shake off the strange sense of foreboding the call had left behind. The following morning, Emily was hosting Isabelle at her home for their private lesson. For the past 2 months, Emily had been tutoring Isabelle in her cozy backyard, a space filled with plants carefully tended by Rose. With potted flowers adorning the walls, the area exuded a calm and inspiring atmosphere, perfect for learning. Emily had 3 other students, but Isabelle's arrival had brought a breath of fresh air to her life. At 18 years old, Isabelle was vibrant and full of energy, lighting up every room she entered. Friendly and talkative, her eyes sparkled whenever she talked about her dreams. She had sought out Emily for help with her English skills, determined to ace her college entrance exams and pursue a degree in journalism. During their first few lessons, Emily realized there was something special about Isabelle, not just her dedication, but an insatiable curiosity that set her apart. "Miss Emily, I've always loved investigating things. As a kid, I'd take apart my toys just to figure out how they worked. Now, I'm fascinated by uncovering stories and piecing things together. Who knows? Maybe one day, I'll crack major cases as an investigative journalist." Isabelle joked, her laugh infectious as she jotted down notes. Emily smiled, captivated by her students' enthusiasm. Isabelle often stayed an extra hour after their lessons to enjoy a cup of coffee, a gesture Rose extended to all the students. But for Isabelle, Rose started preparing freshly baked chocolate chip cookies to pair with the coffee. Isabelle had built a warm connection with Rose, listening intently to her stories and sharing her own youthful perspective on the world. Though Isabelle exuded simplicity in her demeanor, she came from a financially secure family. She drove a shiny new car, always spotless, but never flaunted her privilege. For her, human connections and shared experiences held far more value. Rose often teased, "That girl was born to be rich in spirit, not in money. You'd never know the difference." Occasionally, Isabelle would drop by unexpectedly with small treats. "I brought some bagels and fresh squeezed orange juice because I thought of you while grocery shopping," she'd say, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Sitting around the modest kitchen table, the 3 of them created a cozy ritual of conversation, laughter, and shared stories. For a moment, their struggles seemed to fade into the warmth of their bond. One evening, as the 3 women chatted over coffee, Rose asked Isabelle about her family. Isabelle paused briefly, her usual smile softening. "I lost my dad a few years ago. He meant everything to me. And my mom, well, she's recovering from some health issues. She's getting better, but it's been tough. I try to be there for her as much as I can. Life's not easy for anyone, right?" Her words brought a moment of silence to the table. Emily observed her, realizing that despite her cheerful exterior, Isabelle carried her own share of pain. But truthfully, the simple home had gained a new spark of life with Isabelle's frequent visits. She had a rare ability to uplift everyone around her. One day, after their lesson, Emily took advantage of Rose chatting with a neighbor to open up about something personal. "Isabelle, you're so good at piecing things together. There's something I've been struggling with for years," Emily began hesitantly. Isabelle encouraged her with a curious look, and Emily finally confided about Evelyn, her birth mother, and the emptiness she had felt since learning she was adopted. "What do you know about her, Miss Emily?" Isabelle asked, her investigative instincts kicking in. Emily pulled out an old photograph and a necklace with a blue stone. "This is all I have, a photo and a name. Evelyn. She left me at the church when I was a baby, but I don't know why." Isabelle examined the necklace with fascination. "Miss Emily, this is a start. We could try looking into old records, maybe even talk to people who remember that time. Nowadays, the internet can help uncover a lot. Her enthusiasm planted a seed of hope in Emily's heart for the first time. But anger and hurt still lingered. Why would she do this to me, Isabelle? Why abandon me? I'm not sure I want to know. Isabelle tilted her head, thoughtful. Sometimes people make choices we can't understand until we know the full story. Don't you think you deserve those answers? And maybe Evelyn deserves something too, forgiveness. Emily looked away, clutching the necklace. Forgiveness seemed like an impossible notion. Yet there was something about Isabelle's persistence and empathy that made Emily wonder, even if briefly, whether understanding might be within reach. Without wasting time, Isabelle dove into the search for Evelyn, balancing it with her studies and lessons. It became a purpose for her, and Emily couldn't hide her relief at having someone by her side. Isabelle seemed like an answer to Emily's prayers, not just in finding Evelyn, but in starting to confront the weight she had carried for so long. Meanwhile, Emily treaded carefully when sharing updates with Rose, mindful not to hurt her. Emily had always known Rose wasn't her biological mother, but it had never mattered. From the very beginning, Rose's unconditional love had filled every corner of her life. The bedtime lullabies, the gentle advice, and even the occasional arguments that ended in tight hugs formed the foundation of Emily's world. Rose had sacrificed everything for Emily's happiness. Yet now, torn between her curiosity and the guilt of searching for Evelyn, Emily felt lost. She didn't want Rose to feel replaced, but the longing for answers about her past pulled her forward. The search for Evelyn wasn't just about uncovering the past, it was a journey toward understanding, healing, and learning that family is defined not only by blood but also by love and resilience. The next morning, Isabelle arrived early at Emily's house, as usual, carrying a bag filled with cookies and fresh fruit. Rose was already in the kitchen brewing coffee, and the house was filled with its welcoming aroma. Over a warm cup, Isabelle shared some unexpected news. "I found a lead about your mom, Miss Emily. It wasn't easy, but I tracked down the address of an old hospital where Evelyn might have stayed when you were born. It looks like she underwent some kind of treatment there. Maybe it explains why things happened the way they did. It could be more complicated than we thought." Emily stared at Isabelle, her expression a mix of surprise and anticipation. The name Evelyn always stirred a deep, indescribable ache within her. Yet, alongside the pain, there was a growing curiosity. She felt an urge to visit this place, to uncover more about her mother. But at the same time, a wave of resistance rose in her chest. Something inside whispered that she wasn't ready, not yet. "That's good, Isabelle. But I'm not sure. Do you think now's the right time?" Emily hesitated, searching for the right words. "I've been thinking about this a lot, and I don't know if I'm ready to face it just yet. I think I might need more time to process everything." Isabelle caught the flicker of uncertainty in Emily's face. Without pressing her, she responded with a calmness that seemed to acknowledge the unspoken. "I understand, Miss Emily. I know it's hard. Maybe gathering more information and giving yourself some time to prepare is the best thing. The truth can be heavy, it often needs time to sink in, doesn't it?" Emily studied Isabelle for a moment, letting her words settle. The suggestion of waiting felt like the right call. She wasn't emotionally ready to confront whatever truths might lie ahead. "Yes, maybe waiting is the better option. I need to see if I'm really prepared for this. And I don't want to rush into it, Isabelle." Isabelle smiled, though a faint trace of concern flickered in her eyes. "That's exactly it, Emily. Sometimes, you have to follow your own rhythm, no need to hurry. And I'll be here with you every step of the way." The conversation continued over coffee and laughter, but deep down, Emily knew she was postponing something inevitable. There was a weight to the delay, one she couldn't quite put into words. Isabelle, as always, had a way of making her feel like everything would happen when the timing was right. Emily wasn't sure if that was just a comforting idea or if Isabelle truly understood what she was doing. For now, though, that reassurance was enough. Over the next 2 weeks, Isabelle's investigation into Evelyn's whereabouts intensified. She seemed more dedicated than ever, as if something was driving her with each new detail she uncovered. Emily, on the other hand, found herself in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Isabelle's words about forgiveness still echoed in her mind, but the anger she felt toward her biological mother remained overwhelming. The idea of forgiveness felt distant, almost unattainable. Deep down, she knew she was avoiding it. She wanted a clear answer, but the fear of discovering the truth kept her frozen. Isabelle never pushed Emily to talk about it, yet there was a gentleness in her words that made Emily think. Isabelle continued her quiet search, revealing little as she went along. What unsettled Emily most was the growing sense that Isabelle knew more about her mother than she was letting on. "I found something, Miss Emily," Isabelle said one afternoon after class. Emily had been sitting in her usual silence, lost in thought, trying to push the idea of her mother out of her mind. Isabelle's voice pulled her back. "I think I've got a more concrete lead on Evelyn. She lived in this city up until the 90s, according to some records I found. Apparently, she worked at a small fabric store downtown. A woman who worked there with her said Evelyn left suddenly, without much explanation." Emily looked at Isabelle, a mix of curiosity and skepticism in her eyes. "And what else did you find out?" Isabelle hesitated for a moment, as though carefully choosing her words. "I managed to get the address of the store where she worked. I think we could go there and ask around. Maybe someone still remembers her." Emily felt a pang in her chest at the thought of finally tracking down Evelyn. The idea of getting answers terrified her, but she couldn't turn back, not now. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Isabelle asked, her concern more for Emily's emotional state than the investigation itself. "Maybe this is the right time to close that chapter, you know?" Emily forced a weak smile, trying to mask her fear. "I feel like I shouldn't go, but I need to know the truth. Let's go tomorrow." Isabelle gave her a calm smile, though her eyes carried a depth Emily couldn't quite understand. Isabelle nodded, but there was a quiet determination in her expression. She wasn't going to give up. Emily didn't know it yet, but Isabelle sensed that this search wasn't just about finding Emily's biological mother. It was about something deeper, finding forgiveness for something no one could understand without truly confronting the pain. After Isabelle left, Emily retreated to her room. The storm of emotions overwhelmed her, and she couldn't bring herself to sleep. Isabelle's words replayed in her mind, tangled with memories of her mother and the sting of abandonment. After hours of crying and reflection, Emily took a deep breath, wiped her tears, and grabbed her purse. Heart pounding and acting on impulse, she decided to leave. "Where are you going, Emily?" Rose asked from the kitchen doorway, her usual curious expression fixed on her. "Just running an errand downtown," Emily replied quietly, trying to hide her emotions. She didn't want anyone to know where she was really going or what she was searching for. When she arrived at the store Isabelle had mentioned, Emily found an older woman working behind the counter. She stood back, unsure of herself for a moment, before finally stepping forward. The woman appeared distracted, but Emily felt an odd sense that something was off. She waited until all the customers had been helped, then approached with a trembling voice. "Excuse me, do you know a woman named Evelyn? She worked here in the 90s? The woman studied Emily for a moment, her eyes sharp and focused. After a brief pause, she asked a question that left Emily speechless. "Are you the sister of the girl who was here this morning?" Emily swallowed hard, her heart racing. She didn't know what to say. "No, I'm not her sister," she said, feeling a strange mix of discomfort and curiosity. "We're just friends, trying to figure out what happened to Evelyn. I'm a teacher. Isabelle, the girl who was here, told me you might be able to help." The woman's expression softened slightly at the mention of Isabelle. "Ah, Isabelle. Of course, yes. She told me about the investigation. Let's talk. Follow me. The woman, whose name was Dora, glanced at the counter and asked someone else to take over. She led Emily to a small room at the back of the store. As they walked, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the strange coincidence that morning. Why hadn't Isabelle mentioned she'd already been here? And what else did she know about Evelyn? Emily looked at Dora, her heart pounding in her chest. The elderly woman sat in silence at the table, her eyes heavy with a sadness deeper than words could convey. After a pause, Dora took a deep breath and, with a faraway look, began to speak. Evelyn, she was such a good girl. Too young to go through everything she went through. When she got here, it was like she was running from something, or someone. Her boyfriend, Dora hesitated, carefully choosing her words. The man she was with, he wasn't a good person. Not at all. He threatened her constantly. Not just with words. You could feel the fear around her. She couldn't open up to anyone, knowing her world could collapse at any moment. And really, who could blame her? She was all alone, no family, no one to turn to. Back then, the laws weren't as helpful as they are today. Emily listened in silence, her eyes fixed on Dora. The pain in the elderly woman's voice was tangible. She tried everything, tried to survive any way she could, but life wasn't kind to her. I saw her struggle, her anguish. She came to church one night, looking for a bit of peace, some relief. But she was so desperate, Emily. You don't know what it's like to see someone in that state. And when she showed up here that day, there was something different in her eyes. I knew she was preparing for something, but I never imagined what. Dora paused, seemingly lost in her memories. Emily felt a growing ache in her chest. What could Evelyn have done to reach that point? She told me she couldn't take it anymore. She said she needed to leave, to start over somewhere far away from everything and everyone. I thought she was just trying to escape her circumstances. I avoided pressing her for details. I could feel she didn't want to talk about the baby. She said goodbye quickly, gave me a hug, and left. I didn't know what to do. I thought she was just going to restart her life, maybe find some kind of peace. But after that, I never heard from her again. Emily couldn't find the words to respond. Evelyn's pain was so evident in this story, but the weight of the choices she'd made felt even heavier. Pain, fear, uncertainty, all of it intertwined in her mother's story. But, don't you know where she went? What happened to her? Emily asked, swallowing the lump of anguish building in her throat. Dora lowered her gaze, her eyes filled with deep sorrow. Then she looked up, her expression a mix of regret and understanding. She didn't come back, dear, she said, her voice soft and almost imperceptible. But I heard she left because she thought life here had no future for her or the baby. She believed that maybe, starting over somewhere else, she could give that child a chance. She thought the only way to save both of you was to get away from what was tearing her apart. No one ever heard from her again? Emily pressed, her voice trembling. Dora shook her head again. No. She was gone, and that was the last we knew. But I've always believed she wanted her baby to have a better life. A life without the suffering she endured. Maybe that was the only choice she thought she had left. Emily sat in silence, her mind racing as she tried to process everything she had just heard. The truth about her biological mother wasn't just a simple revelation, it was a deep wound, a profound blow to her heart. The idea that her mother had abandoned her believing distance was the only salvation felt unbearably heavy. She didn't know how to feel anger, sorrow, or even a strange sense of understanding. Dora's words echoed in her mind, but no matter how hard she tried, Emily couldn't find relief or answers. Deep down, she felt an irreparable loss, an emotional void that could never be filled. Yet, there was also a painful sense that her biological mother had done it out of love, though it was hard to accept. Dora, thank you for telling me all of this, Emily finally said, breaking the silence. She stood up, her mind still spinning with questions and conflicting emotions. "I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need to figure this out." Dora gave her a gentle smile, trying to ease the tension on Emily's face. "You'll find your answers, dear. I believe that." Emily looked at Dora with gratitude before saying goodbye. She left, feeling like the investigation had reached a critical juncture. She needed more answers, but with each step forward, the weight of Evelyn's story seemed harder to bear. Emily didn't know what to expect. When she told Isabelle what Dora had revealed, her friend's reaction was entirely unexpected. Isabelle started crying, silent tears streaming down her face, like a sudden storm breaking through her composed exterior. Emily stared at her, stunned. Isabelle always seemed so in control, so rational. She never imagined her friend could be this sensitive. "Isabelle, what's going on?" Emily asked, confused. Wiping her eyes quickly, Isabelle tried to pull herself together. I don't know, Emily. It's just so painful to think about what that woman went through, how much she suffered. I really hoped the story would be different." Emily continued recounting everything Dora had shared, sparing no detail. Evelyn's pain was undeniable, but Emily still couldn't understand why her biological mother never came back to find her. The idea of such a young woman, suffering so deeply, leaving her daughter behind, it didn't add up. "Why didn't she look for me, Isabelle? Why didn't she try to contact me after all that?" "It doesn't make sense," Emily said, her voice trembling with anguish. Isabelle looked at Emily, as if searching for the right words. "I know you're confused, but maybe she stayed away for a reason that's harder to understand than we can imagine. Let's try to find out more." Later, when Isabelle was leaving, Emily thanked her for the support. Seeing tears in her friend's eyes, she apologized for dragging her into the situation. "This story is mine too now. Who knows? Maybe a book in the future," Isabelle said with a faint smile. That night, as Emily was getting ready to head out to work, Isabelle pulled up in front of her house unexpectedly. "Emily, this is urgent. We need to go now. I know where Evelyn is. This might be our last chance." Emily hesitated. "Now? I'm not ready for this conversation." Isabelle locked eyes with her, a serious intensity in her gaze. "It's not a conversation, Emily. It's a meeting." With her heart racing and her thoughts swirling, Emily climbed into the car. Something inside her told her she couldn't back down. Whatever was about to happen, it had to be now. The car sped through the night as Emily tried to organize her thoughts, but fear gripped her tightly. What am I supposed to say to her? I'm not prepared. I don't know what to expect. Without taking her eyes off the road, Isabelle spoke softly, almost whispering, "You don't need to say anything. Just see. You'll understand." Emily felt a tightness in her chest. Deep down, she feared this might be her last chance to see Evelyn alive. The car finally stopped in front of St. Vincent's Hospital, a high-end medical facility far from the routines of daily life in their town. Emily looked at Isabelle, confused. Why here? What does Evelyn have to do with this hospital? Isabelle didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped out of the car and gestured for Emily to follow. Inside, they passed the reception desk, where Isabelle mentioned that Evelyn's daughter was here to see her, handing over their IDs. With every step, Emily's heart pounded louder. Has she been here? What happened to her? Emily asked, still trying to piece things together. A nurse led them down a quiet, dimly lit corridor to a room at the end of the hall. When the door opened, Emily nearly fell to her knees at the sight of the woman lying in the bed, hooked up to multiple machines, visibly frail and fragile. She looked so. Emily couldn't finish her sentence, the shock of seeing Evelyn in such a vulnerable state stealing her words. In a calm, steady voice, the nurse explained, she has a severe lung condition. Her health has deteriorated rapidly over the past few months. She's been spending more and more time here, and now she's on a ventilator. She's scheduled for a risky surgery to stabilize her condition. Still in disbelief, Emily stared at the woman in the bed. She looked so different from how Emily had imagined her biological mother. Will she survive? Emily asked, her eyes filling with tears. The nurse gave her a serious but compassionate look. We're doing everything we can. But given her condition, we can't make any guarantees. The words cut through Emily like a knife. Isabelle moved closer, wrapping her arms around her friend in a comforting embrace. Emily let the tears fall, finally releasing the emotions she had held back for so long. Isabelle cried with her. As Emily took a closer look at Evelyn, she noticed something. Around her neck, Evelyn wore a necklace with a blue stone, identical to the one that had been left with Emily in the church alongside her photograph. In that moment, it felt as though the world stopped. A mix of compassion, sorrow, and an incomplete understanding washed over Emily. Somehow, though, things were starting to make sense. The silence that filled the car as Emily and Isabelle left the hospital was almost tangible, heavy like a fog shrouding their emotions. Emily could still hear the rhythmic beeping of the machines and see Evelyn's fragile figure, someone who felt like a stranger yet was deeply connected to her. Anger, sadness, and confusion swirled in her mind, while Isabelle, sitting beside her, seemed weighed down by a burden she couldn't yet share. When they arrived at a small diner, they chose a secluded booth. Emily watched Isabelle absent-mindedly stir her coffee without taking a sip, her gaze fixed on something unseen. Emily herself was lost in thought, the silence stretching until it became unbearable. Isabelle, Emily began, her voice low and filled with pain. I don't know what to do with all of this. I don't even know who I am anymore. And honestly, I'm not sure I should have dragged you into it. Isabelle lifted her eyes, and for the first time, Emily saw something new in her. The woman who always seemed so strong and composed now looked vulnerable, almost scared. Emily, I never wanted to hurt you, Isabelle replied, her voice trembling. I know this is a lot, but you deserve the truth. All of it. With hesitant hands, Isabelle reached into her pocket and placed something on the table. Emily's eyes widened as she recognized the necklace. The blue stone, glowing faintly in the diner's light, was identical to the one she'd always kept, a piece of her own lost history staring back at her. Where did you get this? Emily asked, her voice laced with disbelief. My mother gave it to me when I was a child, Isabelle answered softly. She told me it was special, that I should take care of it. I never understood why until I overheard a conversation between my mom and my grandmother. They were talking about you, Emily. Emily froze. It felt as if the ground beneath her was shifting. She looked from the necklace to Isabelle, struggling to piece together what this revelation meant. You knew? All this time? Emily asked, her voice rising. You knew Evelyn was my mother and never told me? Isabelle took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she clutched the necklace. She looked Emily directly in the eye. Emily. I'm your sister. The words, spoken with an emotion that carried both regret and longing, hit like a bombshell. Emily blinked several times, her mind refusing to accept what she'd just heard. What? No. You're joking. This can't be true, Emily said, recoiling slightly, her heart pounding. I wish it weren't this way, Emily, Isabelle continued, her voice breaking. I found out when I was 15. My mom, Evelyn, was consumed with guilt over leaving you. She thought she didn't deserve to have you back. That's why she never reached out. But when I learned about you, something changed in me. I felt like I had to know you, had to be part of your life, even if it was from a distance. Emily shook her head, fighting back tears. So, she knew where I was, knew who I was, and still never came for me? Why? Why would she leave me like I didn't matter? Isabelle hesitated, knowing this truth would cut deep. She was scared, Emily. Scared of hurting you even more. Scared you'd reject her. She believed you were better off without her, that she had no right to disrupt your life after what she did. That guilt consumed her every day. Emily felt a knot tighten in her throat. She stood abruptly, tears streaming down her face. And you? You knew and kept me in the dark. How could you? Isabelle reached out, but Emily stepped back. Emily, I didn't know how to tell you. My mother made me promise to stay away from you. She thought it would only cause more pain. But I couldn't carry this alone anymore. Without her knowing, I got close to you, hoping to see if there was a chance for reconciliation. I wasn't trying to manipulate you, I genuinely wanted to uncover the truth alongside you. But then Mom got worse, and now we're here, with her so close to the end. I just want her to find peace. And I believe it could help you, too. Please forgive me, Emily, but try to understand. Emily shook her head in disbelief. Understand? After all this time? You both decided my fate without giving me a choice. And now you expect me to just accept it. Without waiting for a response, Emily grabbed her bag and stormed out of the diner, leaving Isabelle alone at the table, the necklace still resting on the wood. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she walked through the streets, unsure where she was going but knowing she needed to get away. In that moment, memories of her entire life flooded back. Evelyn, the biological mother she never knew. Isabelle, a sister who had kept the truth hidden for years. Emily felt like her world was collapsing, leaving her with no solid ground, no answers, only a pain that seemed unbearable. Yet, as the evening fell and the city lights began to flicker on, something in her heart whispered that this story was far from over. Emily arrived home with tears streaming down her face and her heart in pieces. The anger and pain still burned intensely in her mind. As she opened the door, she found Rose in the living room, quietly folding laundry. Upon seeing her adoptive daughter's state, Rose dropped everything and hurried to embrace her. "What happened, sweetheart?" Rose asked, concerned, as she guided Emily to the couch. Emily collapsed into her adoptive mother's arms, sobbing like a small child. For several minutes, all she could do was cry while Rose held her close, whispering comforting words. After a while, Emily took a deep breath and began to speak. "Mom, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what to believe. My biological mother is on her deathbed, and now I've found out that I have a sister. Isabelle is my sister. And she's known for years but never told me." Rose listened in silence, her face serious yet filled with understanding. "She showed me a necklace, just like mine. She said Evelyn, my biological mother, gave it to her. Then she told me everything, about the abandonment, the guilt. I left because I couldn't bear to hear anymore. It's like my whole life has been a lie." Rose held Emily's hands tightly, waiting for her to finish. "My biological mother had years to find me. She knew where I was but did nothing. And Isabelle, why did she keep quiet all this time? How could they make all these decisions for me?" Emily started crying again, and Rose, with infinite patience, waited until she calmed down. A few moments later, the sound of a car pulling up echoed down the street. Emily looked out the window and saw Isabelle stepping out of her car. Her heart raced with anger and frustration. Soon, the doorbell rang. "Emily, please. Let me talk to you." Isabelle called from the other side of the door. Emily crossed her arms and backed away. "I don't want to talk to her, Rose. Not now." Isabelle tried a few more times, but the sound of retreating footsteps indicated she had given up. Rose, with the calm wisdom of someone who knew Emily's heart better than anyone, sat down beside her and gently held her hands again. "Sweetheart, I understand that you're hurt. And I won't tell you that you're wrong to feel this way. But, can I share something I've learned from life?" Emily, her eyes still glistening with tears, nodded silently. "I know what it's like to feel rejected. When I tried to adopt you, people judged me harshly. They said I was too old, that I didn't know anything about raising a child. I was so afraid I wouldn't be enough for you, Emily. But when you finally came into my life, I realized that love conquers any fear." Rose paused, her voice trembling slightly. "Evelyn made a mistake, Emily, and from what you've told me, she's been paying for it ever since. Guilt and fear can paralyze a person. Maybe she believed she had no right to look for you. Maybe she thought you were better off without her." Emily started shaking her head in denial, but Rose squeezed her hands gently. "I know it hurts. And I know forgiveness isn't easy. But, my dear, sometimes forgiveness isn't just for the person who made the mistake. It's for the one who's carrying the weight of the pain. Evelyn may not have been the mother you deserved, but you have a chance to be the woman she needs now. Not for her, but for yourself, to free your heart from this pain." Emily felt Rose's words like a soothing balm, though doubt still lingered. "And Isabelle? She lied to me, Rose. How can I trust her after this?" "Sweetheart," Rose said with a sad smile, "what you call a lie might just be her fear of doing the wrong thing. She's not perfect, just like I'm not, and neither are you. But from what I can see, she only wants to love you and help you find peace." Emily looked at Rose's hands, then at the face of the woman who had raised her with so much love. Her words were beginning to make sense, but the fear of another heartbreak held her back. "Think about it, sweetheart," Rose concluded, gently stroking Emily's cheek. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means letting go of the weight that ties you to the past and making space for a different future. Maybe, by forgiving, you'll discover a part of yourself you didn't even know was there." Emily stood slowly and walked over to the window. She looked outside and saw Isabelle still in her car, her head resting on the steering wheel. She looked as broken as Emily felt. Rose's words echoed in her mind. Forgiveness wouldn't erase the pain, but perhaps it could set her free. Emily opened the front door with quick steps, her eyes still filled with tears. Rose's words echoed in her mind, tearing through the veil of anger and hurt that had gripped her heart. Without hesitation, she crossed the small front yard and walked straight to Isabelle's car, parked beneath the shade of a tree. Isabelle sat in the driver's seat, her head down, hands gripping the steering wheel as if holding on to the last bit of strength she had left. When she heard Emily's footsteps, she quickly lifted her eyes, her expression filled with surprise and apprehension. Emily opened the car door without saying a word, and before Isabelle could react, she threw her arms around her. It was a desperate embrace, full of emotion, tears, and a mix of pain and forgiveness that words could never express. Isabelle froze for a moment, shocked, but soon wrapped her arms around her sister, holding her tightly as if afraid she might disappear. "I'm so sorry, Emily," Isabelle whispered, her voice breaking. "I should have told you everything earlier. I was just so afraid of messing everything up, of losing you." Emily, sobbing, shook her head against her sister's shoulder. "I was scared too, Isabelle. That everything was a lie. That I'd never have answers. I was so angry, but I don't want to carry that. I don't want to lose you." The two stayed locked in the embrace for what felt like an eternity, letting the tears wash away the wounds. Finally, Emily pulled back slightly, still holding Isabelle's arms, and looked her in the eyes. "Why didn't you leave? Why did you stay here, waiting for me?" Emily asked, her voice still shaky. Isabelle took a deep breath and, even with red eyes, tried to muster the courage to speak. "Because I didn't come here just to ask for your forgiveness." Emily frowned, confused, while Isabelle held her hands, as if gathering strength before saying what came next. "Emily, our mom woke up." Emily's heart raced, and her hands began to tremble slightly. "Evelyn, she woke up? How is she?" Isabelle paused, her face serious, weighed down by the gravity of the moment. "She's really weak, Emily. Still fragile, but she's conscious. The doctor said, she can talk to us. We can see her." The words hung in the air, as if each syllable were a heavy stone Emily had to carry. She swallowed hard, trying to process the information. I don't know if I can, Emily said, her voice barely a whisper. What if she doesn't want me there? What if it's too late for anything? Isabelle gripped her hands tighter, trying to offer reassurance. I know you're scared. I am too. But, Emily. I saw the look in her eyes when she woke up. She said your name. She wants to see you. She needs to see you. Emily felt a lump form in her throat. This was the moment she'd waited for her entire life, but never in these circumstances. And yet, something in Isabelle's voice, in the sincere, emotional look in her sister's eyes, made her feel that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to heal the wounds that life had given them. After a long silence, Emily finally nodded. Take me to her. The hospital was quiet that afternoon, the silence broken only by the occasional sound of footsteps in the hallways and the steady beeping of machines in patient rooms. Emily and Isabelle walked side by side, speaking little. The weight of the moment was etched deeply on their faces. When they reached the room's door, Emily hesitated. Isabelle placed a reassuring hand on her arm, offering silent support. This was the moment Emily had both longed for and dreaded her entire life. When they entered, Evelyn was awake, her eyes fixed on the window as if contemplating something beyond the landscape. Her pale face looked more worn than ever, but there was a faint glimmer of hope in her gaze as it shifted to her two daughters. Emily, Evelyn's voice was low, frail, but laden with emotion. Emily took a few hesitant steps, looking at the woman she now knew to be her mother. Pain and uncertainty wrestled with a deep desire for connection. Isabelle stayed near the door, giving them space. I don't know what to say, Emily admitted, her voice trembling. Evelyn weakly gestured for her to come closer. You don't need to say anything. Just, let me look at you. Emily sat beside the bed, her heart heavy. Evelyn raised a trembling hand and gently touched Emily's face. That touch unleashed a wave of emotions, grief, love, longing. I dreamed of this moment so often but never had the courage to make it real, Evelyn said, tears streaming down her face. I've made so many mistakes, so many with you. Can you forgive me? Emily struggled to speak through the lump in her throat. I want to forgive you, but it's so hard. I spent so many years not knowing, not understanding. Why, Evelyn? Why didn't you ever come for me? Evelyn took a deep breath, her chest rising with effort. Because I didn't think I deserved to. The pain of leaving you was more than I could bear, and I convinced myself it was better for you, better never to know me. But every day, the emptiness grew. Isabelle watched silently, tears brimming in her eyes. It was hard to witness her mother, who had always seemed so strong, so vulnerable. Evelyn, her voice trembling, began to reveal the truth to Emily, each word heavy with sorrow. When you were just a baby, I was running, Emily. I didn't have a choice. Thomas, your father, he became someone I didn't recognize. We were young, dreaming of a better life, but he got involved with dangerous things. The police came after him, and he grew violent, reckless. I feared for both of us. He was dangerous. Emily listened intently, a foreign ache growing in her chest as she tried to make sense of her mother's choices. I had nothing to eat, Emily, and more than that, I was terrified. Terrified that he'd hurt you, take you away, or worse. All I could think about was keeping you safe. So, I left you at the church, believing you'd have a better chance without me, without him. I couldn't risk it anymore. Emily fought back tears as Evelyn's words pierced her heart like a deep wound. I never went back, Emily, because the danger was still there. I knew if I came for you, I'd put your life at risk. And I couldn't bear to see any more violence. Thomas died, but I never felt relief. He was gone, but the damage he caused, to you and me, never disappeared. Emily's heart ached as she saw the profound pain in her mother's eyes, a woman who had always wanted to be by her side but was forced to make an unthinkable decision. Evelyn, her expression full of guilt and regret, continued in a voice barely above a whisper. After that, I started over. I moved to another city, where I met the man I married. He was kind, Emily, nothing like what I'd known before. Together, we built a new life. I found safety and peace, and with him, the chance to do things right. When Isabelle was born, I saw her as my chance to be the mother I couldn't be for you. But the pain of losing you never left. My fear and cowardice kept me from facing the past, but it ate away at me every day. Emily felt a storm of conflicting emotions, anger, sadness, love, and, most of all, a painful relief. She didn't have all the answers or a clear path forward, but for the first time, she saw the possibility of healing. I don't know how, but I'll try to understand. I'll try to find forgiveness, for you and for myself, Emily said, her voice breaking but resolute. The room fell silent, but it was no longer a silence of pain. It was a silence filled with possibility, with the hope of rebuilding. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt that perhaps, just perhaps, she'd found the beginning of a new path. Emily held Evelyn's hand, and as they shared this moment, the doctor entered, breaking the scene with a professional but serious tone. "Excuse me," he said, glancing at Evelyn and then at the two daughters. "We need to discuss her condition." Emily and Isabelle exchanged tense looks before focusing on the doctor. "Evelyn's situation is delicate," he began, adjusting his glasses. "We've discovered a new complication, an aneurysm that could rupture at any moment. There are two options. We can perform emergency surgery, but it's incredibly risky. The chances of success are low, and the procedure itself could be fatal." The air seemed to leave the room. The doctor continued, "The other option is not to operate. In that case, she could live for an undetermined amount of time, but there's a constant risk of the aneurysm rupturing. That could mean days, weeks, or months. The time left would be limited." Evelyn closed her eyes, absorbing the words. Emily and Isabelle looked at her, unable to hide their despair. "Mom," Isabelle began, but her voice broke. Evelyn opened her eyes, her expression resolute. "I've made my decision." The doctor looked at her, waiting. "I want to go home. I want to spend my last days with my daughters, not in a hospital bed." Emily's eyes widened, panic rising in her chest. "But, what if the surgery works? You could recover, you could." Evelyn interrupted her with a sad smile. "I've lived with regrets for too long. Now that I finally have you both, I don't want to waste another second. Even if it's just a few days, I want to be with you. Please, let me have that." The room fell silent. Emily felt fresh tears rolling down her face as Isabelle held their mother's hand, trying to contain her own pain. "Okay, Mom," Emily said, her voice soft but full of emotion. "We'll stay by your side until the very end." The doctor left, granting the family privacy, and the three of them embraced, sharing a moment that, despite the pain, was filled with love. Rose's house was aglow with improvised string lights, some flickering and a few dimmed, yet their charm added to the simplicity of the space. The small dining table was filled with homemade dishes, filling the room with comforting aromas. There was stuffing, herb-roasted chicken, vibrant salads, cakes, and desserts Emily and Rose had spent the day preparing together. Every dish was crafted with love, the most special ingredient that evening. Evelyn sat in a chair near the table, her eyes shining. Her physical frailty stood in stark contrast to the light radiating from her soul. Nearby, Emily and Isabelle worked to decorate the rest of the room, hanging foil stars that Rose had fashioned with what she had on hand. "Doesn't it look beautiful?" Emily asked, fastening a star to the ceiling. "It's perfect," Evelyn replied, her voice thick with emotion. "You've turned this evening into something I never thought I'd experience." Isabelle, holding another star, glanced at her mother with a gentle smile. "I think that's what Christmas is about, Mom. Finding beauty and love in the simplest things." Rose emerged from the kitchen, carrying a tray of powdered sugar-dusted donut holes. "I hope no one's too shy to eat. I made enough for everyone to have seconds and thirds." "Mom, you're spoiling us," Emily teased, wrapping an arm around her. "Oh, sweetheart," Rose said, resting her hands on Emily's shoulders. "You all deserve every treat and then some." Later, after the meal and the room had filled with laughter, Evelyn cleared her throat softly, her voice calm but deliberate. "I need to do something," she said, drawing everyone's attention. The chatter stopped, and the others watched as Evelyn delicately removed the necklace she had worn for as long as anyone could remember. The blue gemstone caught the room's warm light, shimmering as if it, too, were moved by the moment. "Rose," Evelyn began, holding the necklace in her trembling hands, "I know this necklace has always been part of my story. But now, I want it to be part of yours. You're not just a friend, you've been the mother Emily needed, the support I couldn't give her." Rose, visibly stunned, placed a hand on her chest. "Evelyn, you don't have to do this." "I do," Evelyn insisted, her tears flowing freely. "This necklace symbolizes love and protection, and you embody both of those things. I want you to have it as a reminder that even after I'm gone, we're all connected by something greater." Rose accepted the necklace with trembling hands, her eyes moist with emotion. She glanced at Emily and Isabelle, who were silently crying, then turned back to Evelyn. "I promise, Evelyn. I'll take care of our girls." Evelyn smiled and reached out her hand to Rose. "You've always been the foundation of everything. I'll never have enough words to express my gratitude." Later that evening, the four women sat together at the table, now scattered with empty plates and crumbs. Emily looked at Isabelle, then at Evelyn and Rose, and exhaled deeply. "I never thought I could forgive so quickly," she admitted, holding her mother's hand. "But I realized forgiveness isn't about who was wrong. It's about what we choose to carry. And I choose to carry love." Isabelle, her voice filled with emotion, added, "And I choose to carry this family. No matter what the future holds, we're a family now. That's something no one can take away." Evelyn, her voice weak but brimming with gratitude, said, "You are the greatest blessings of my life. This Christmas is my miracle." And isn't that what Christmas is all about? Miracles. Before the night ended, Emily picked up an old guitar and began strumming a familiar Christmas tune. They sang together, their voices mingling with laughter, tears, and embraces. Evelyn, though visibly tired, stayed awake as long as she could, cherishing every moment of that magical evening. When the song ended, she looked at her daughters and rose one last time before settling into her chair. "If this is my last Christmas," she whispered, "I want you to remember it as the happiest of my life." Emily, Isabelle, and Rose embraced her all at once, forming a circle of love and unity. And in that moment, under the glow of the Christmas lights and the warmth of forgiveness, they each felt something eternal, the transformative power of love and redemption.